Welcome to the 72nd broadcast of the T-ROH show. This is your host, Keith. We got John here.
Here. Hope you enjoy.
All right, and we got a couple of guests, Adam and Chris. They're part of the American National Union. Want to say hello, guys?
Hello, everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
All right, that was Adam and then Chris. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is a little bit different than what we normally do. A lot of times we go through and we expose things. We show people what's going on here, what's going on there, based on the research that we have and that type of thing. But today, what we want to talk about is something that you're not going to expect. So I'll tell you what we'll do. Chris and Adam, you guys can decide who wants to tell the story. If usually Chris can tell a story too. Tell a story on what happened to you the first time when you guys were walking down the street, and then the next two times afterwards. Now, folks, we're not going to tell you what we did. We're not going to tell you how we did it. But we want to show you that it can be done. So go ahead. We're talking about when you guys were leaving the grocery store and you were being stalked. Chris, Adam?
Okay, so yes, we were walking from Whole Foods and we were carrying all these groceries. Had our hands full, and we started in the street, and there was a cop at the corner. And take in mind, we were walking, and for some reason, the cop started creeping up behind us, and he was moving very slowly, and it was very awkward and very uncomfortable. The police officer jumped out of the car, and he approached us, and he said, "Chris, we have a warrant for your arrest for two $50 fines that you didn't pay." And, that clearly indicated to us that they were gang stalking and spying on us. And it was kind of frightening because the police officer, pretty much lunged forward to Christopher, and he grabbed his bags out of his hands, threw them on the floor, and kicked them. And then just went on to continue and assaulting him by putting him in handcuffs, and then putting him back in the car. And that's from
an assault. You mean by he was just grabbing him hard and all that other stuff, being real firm and all that kind of crap, right?
Yes, he was very aggressive.
Okay.
And then they walked towards me and asked me if I wanted any of it. And so at that point, I knew that if they took me in too, we were going to both spend a long time in jail for no reason at all. So I had to just leave that situation and just get out of there so I can do my thing. Is there anything that you remember any clear, Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, you just touched upon it. The police officer proceeded pretty belligerently and with hostility when he was grabbing the groceries. I could tell right off the bat he was inciting violence, trying to get me to react in a manner that was violent towards him. And we're peaceful people. We were just going about our day and our way on our way home. And so, being placed in handcuffs like that, and the gaslighting and manipulation that this gentleman that claimed to be associated with the local police department, it shows the serious nature of, how human rights violations were, the serious nature of the human rights violations that occurred.
Okay, now both of you were classified as sovereign citizens at the time.
We were.
So sovereign citizens are considered domestic terrorists. SPLC, folks, if anybody doesn't know what that is, SPLC goes around at Southern Poverty Law Center. They're basically a communist or a fascist organization. The source of the group that they have together that's working very closely with Google and YouTube goes around to each police department and they put them through this whole like an hour and a half, 2 hour program. Have them see videos and these kind of things, and basically scare the crap out of them. It's what usually happens. They take one incident that happened from a 17-year-old boy that we even know of, way back when. This was years ago, and they compound we go. I say they add to that. In other words, they add to the fear and add to all these things. So anybody that has like or acts a certain way is considered a sovereign citizen. And after 2001, 9/11, it went from sovereign citizen to sovereign citizen domestic terrorist. All right. So both of you two were classified as sovereign citizens. You've been asked these questions before. They put this on there. So this guy walks up and he grabs the groceries because, see, you got to understand something. In the police officer's mind, he thinks that Adam and Chris want to kill him and shoot him. So what they have to do is they have to incite him to violence so they can put him away for a long time so they can sleep easy at night. That's all that's going on there. So they're doing their best to get him to do that. So, you know, why hit somebody's groceries out of their hand and then kick them? That's something what some douche freaking what do you call it, bully would do in high school, right? You got your tray in your hand and lunch, and they hits it and knocks it all over the floor and kicks everything, trying to incite you to hit him back so he can beat you up. It's nothing. It's the same as high school stuff. Now we're going to show you something, okay? So, Chris and Adam, if you want to explain what happened the next time you had an encounter with police.
Okay, so it wasn't even, well, I would say about a week later, and we had a new tenant in here, and it was kind of our fault for not fully vetting her out. And I guess she came back intoxicated and, you know, causing a bunch of problems, and she never really, you know, signed the lease agreement and paid the full, you know, first month's last rent. So she for no reason became negative towards us and called the police out. And the police came out, and they came, and there was like a bunch of them. It was about 5 of them at the door, and we knew we had to answer. So, you know, someone called the police from inside the house. So I answer, and what I would have to say first is that most of these cops, they're trained in a particular way, and, you know, there's certain indications to, you know, that tells them, rather, if you know what you're doing, if you know anything about the law of nations, customary to international law, and pretty much if you have everything in order. And so what typically happened is that we were able to prove to the police officers very quick that we had everything in place with a lease agreement, and she pretty much called the police on us because she didn't want to sign the lease agreement. So we explained to the officers that she never fulfilled her obligation due to never sign the lease agreement and paying the full first and last month's rent. Therefore, she had no rights here. And immediately, the police officers knew that we knew a little bit about international law, and they very respectful with us, very kind. Every time they wanted to do something, they were asking beforehand, like, "Oh, in 2 minutes, it's gonna be us knocking on the door to hand you over the dog. It's gonna be just us. You know, it's not gonna be the lady." Every time they were gonna do something, they were very polite and they were asking every time in every way. And, you know, what caught me off surprise is that when the police officer, because there's a lot of them, but the last police officer, when he left, he stuck his hand out and shook my hand. That has never happened. I remember, you know, down in South Florida, when I was staying there, I've dealt in over and over and over with hostile police. and there was times that you stick your hand out to shake their hand, they'll look at you like you're some psycho and you're crazy or something. So that, pretty much when you establish international relations and they see that you're not a threat, but also you understand and comprehend human rights, they know there's a lot of liabilities and consequences for the liabilities they create. So when they came here, they immediately saw that this woman was breaking the law. She didn't know anything about the law. She called the police, tried to falsify a report, and instead they sectioned her, which means they put her in a mental hospital for 72 hours because she was claiming to hurt her or others. And she got out, I would say Thursday, and tried to come back in the house like nothing happened. And so we told her, look, you called the police on us for no reason. To me, that's a death threat because you're calling a stranger that's bearing a gun to come confront me. And I don't feel safe with you in this house. You're dangerous to me. So the police officers, it was all different police officers that came. And like always, they asked me first, what's my name? And they test you. They do this to test you to see if you're scared of the all caps name. All right? Because sovereign citizens will real quick try to, separate themselves from the persons. And that's a problem if you're trying to exist in this world, because under the law of nations, your persons has to be recognized. And so that's under international law. And so these police officers came out, and once again, they saw that we were very knowledgeable about international law. They were also very respectful and kind, and every time they, wanted anything, they asked permission first. I mean, I've never really had those type of encounters with police officers. Most likely, they're, and other times they're having these godlike mindsets where they're just barking orders rather than asking permission. And so, correcting your status as meaning as correcting the presumption, by, moving your residence the metropolitan city state, which is the municipalities under the Pope, and putting it back into the states of the Union where the country is, where the United States of America, that's where you have standing. And when that record is corrected and you know how to present yourself and have international relations with these people where you're communicating in a way where you respect them and they respect you, because these are still human beings first. And like Keith mentioned, they just don't want to be harmed in any way, and that's fair. That's very fair.
Now, didn't they even mentioned you two in the first encounter with Crazy, okay, with Crazy Woman. They even mentioned you guys were nationals.
Yeah, the day before.
Well, go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
Go ahead, Chris. That's all right.
Yeah, when our temporary guest first, she got picked up by the police because she was panhandling, and apparently on the ride back, they didn't want to drive down the street. They told her they didn't want to drive down the street because there were nationals living there. So to me, that just shows they didn't want the liability necessarily, and then they totally recognized and respected the status and standing that Adam just alluded to that we have as American nationals.
All right, folks, we're not going to tell you exactly how we did that. I'm going to tell you why. Because if we tell people exactly how we did that, there's always going to be groups out there that, first of all, are all afraid of the all cap name. Number one, they're afraid of the person, which is a problem mentally in itself. And then they're going to twist everything we did into something else and then get a bunch of other people in trouble. That's usually what happens. When the steps are simple to make that happen, and it's very peaceful, and it's an easy way to handle things, they're going to get paranoid, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of paranoid people out there. They're going to get fearful. And when you are asked to do certain things, here, do this, and we'll get this straightened out, all of a sudden, the people that are asking you that are nuts. They're crazy. There's crazy. There's no way that that could be true. Blah, 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 blah. No way that could be true. And the reason why they think that is because they don't know the law. They don't know international relations. They don't know international law. And when they don't know that, what you do looks crazy to them. Not realizing, no, that's how you do it. That's how it's done. And once it's done, then you can go from, now keep in mind, folks, 3 weeks ago, both Adam and Chris were sovereign citizen domestic terrorists wanting to shoot people, according to the police. Violent as hell. Today, they're shaking hands and everybody's being respectful. Now, you tell me that we can't do it, and I'll tell you you're full of shit.
Yeah, we're living testimony that the naturalization process works. You know, just even declaring your residency straightens out your political status, and it just goes to show you that the General Post Office, delivering the persons through the General Post Office to the states of the Union, the GPO is really the gateway back to the original Union and the original states of the Union, where we have our rights, status, privileges, and immunities back, and that the you know, that individual is back as a population of one in the original state, in the original Union. It works.
Okay, and you've got I don't know, we have about 90 to 100 people that have come through here. All right, John can tell you this. He's been here for a long time. And we consider them what we call disgruntled. Every time something they can't handle, what they're learning and what they're beginning to understand, every time they can't handle that, they freak out, take off. And John, if you want to unmute, I'll give you time to unmute. Every single time, whose fault is it?
It's always our fault.
Always our fault.
That's right. We try to straighten them out, get them straightened out, get all. To start with, not everybody comes over here brings all their baggage with them. They got court cases going on. They got court cases coming up. They got tickets they got to take care of. And they come over here. The first thing they want us to do is take care of it for them. Once we get it straightened out and get them out of the courts and everything over there the best we can, then they don't want to listen to you. They want to do it and continue to do it the way they've been doing it. They don't want to learn the right way to do it. They don't want to get involved with us over here, just so to speak. They just won't listen. And until they learn how to defend themselves as American nationals, they'll continue to have their problems.
Yeah, and operate as an American national, because American nationals don't operate like U.S. citizens do.
That's correct.
We do our business a lot differently. And that, folks, takes time. We have people that come here, and after 6 months of being here, they'll say, you know, I'm just beginning to understand what you guys are talking about on the National Assembly.
You know how long it takes to untrain somebody who's been doing something one way all their life, and get them to lay it down and turn around and do it some other way, do it according to the laws that are written. They don't understand the law until they learn, and they've got to learn the laws before they can apply it. Go ahead, Keith.
All right, so that's what so this is a lot of times what happens, and this is not a bitch session. This is so people understand what the ANU is all about. The ANU is a business-oriented type union that was originally started in 1774. It had the old Articles of Association. We revamped that, then we added a constitution to it and all that. After a bunch of people tried to take it, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. We get a lot of that because they think they know what they're doing. They actually don't know what they're doing. They understand something a certain way. So they start trying to come over here and they start trying to rebel, and they see certain things happening and they misinterpret. They don't understand why it's happening that way. So they start getting scared, and what happens is they start getting paranoid. And then all of a sudden, you have dictators and it's evil and all these things are happening. And all it is they don't understand it. Not yet. So we may have 15 people come through and 9 of them get it, the other ones don't. And this all comes from a generation that was raised with Welcome Back, Kotter. I don't know if everybody remembers that. It's a TV show back in the 70s and 80s. I think it was late 70s. It was Welcome Back, Kotter. And where it was cool to be stupid. That's what the show was basically about. John Travolta was in it. I'm sure everybody remembers Horseshack and Washington and all those guys. Okay, and all of them had their character, and they would come up, and it was basically Mr. Kotter, they called him, was handling a misfit class, and that was a very popular show back in the day. Very popular show. And that same generation was told that it was okay to be stupid. It was funny to be stupid, and it was to be inept, and that doing anything right was uncool. They put that through a lot of that in the 70s, and then started to try to change it, turn it around in the 80s, but it really didn't. It didn't really turn around as well as they could have. And the women were inept, the men were cool. That kind of deal was going on in the 70s. And a lot of those people are here today, and they still believe the same way. We get people that come on and go, I don't know anything about computers, man. I couldn't tell you the first thing about a computer. And I'm thinking, all right, this guy is gonna make it. I'm gonna tell you why. Because he's not willing to learn. He wants everybody to do stuff for himself or for him. That was the 70s way. The man sits back, stays stupid, everybody else does things for him, and he just signs things. Or he, does whatever he could understand. So that's how they operate. And when you have somebody telling you they don't know the first thing about a computer, and what I'm thinking is, I didn't know the first thing about a computer myself until I got on it and started playing with it. And I played with it and messed with it, busted it, fixed it, learned how to do it. It was 3 weeks. I was self-taught back in the day, creating websites when it was hard to create a website. Today it's way too easy. But back in the day when it was hard to create a website, I busted my website 3 times, crashed it over a 3-week period. But after 4 weeks, I understand how it operated to a certain extent, and learned more and more and more, just self-taught, because no one was going to sit down and explain it to me. It was the same thing with the US Code. It was the same thing with the Law of Nations. It was the same thing with a lot of things. And if you're not willing to learn, you're going to fail the George Washington Carver test. And that is this. We have George Washington Carver on our $500 bill. He was a black man. He was born a slave and ended up being free. He freed himself How did a man free himself before the Civil War? He freed himself through knowledge. He became smarter than his captors, then made peace with them. Now, this is going to sound sick to a lot of people, what I'm about to say, especially in the mindset that they're mostly in. One day, you're going to grow up enough to think the U.S. corporation. Because if it wasn't for them, you would still be ignorant. When you come to a point in your life where you're looking at them in your captor, you can turn around and grow up enough and be strong enough to look at him and say, thank you. He's going to go, for what? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be free. Meaning, he pushed you, made you try and learn as much as you could possibly learn. Because let's get to reality here, folks. You guys that want to go to guns and all that kind of stuff, you got a corporation here that has their butt on a neutron bomb. A neutron bomb can go into Chicago, completely wipe out every living thing in Chicago and leave all the buildings standing. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. So getting all big and bad isn't going to do it. Learning and learning and learning and trying and gaining more knowledge and more knowledge and more knowledge. That has been proven over and over and over to do it. You can be in the middle of a Nazi camp and be the smartest Jewish man there, and no one will hurt you. They'll try to use you for your knowledge. The dumb ones will. They'll use power to do it. But eventually, they'll quit and they'll stop. Because that's the key to this world. And when we have what they call disgruntled people, those are people that just couldn't raise their standard. It's not that they couldn't learn, it's they wouldn't learn. So we have an ANU, American National Union Great Council. They come together every Tuesday night. And what was, I think, Johnson doing, guys? Every single day. This was going on for months.
He was hijacking the meetings, talking about guru crap, trying to change the union, the American National Union, into a judiciary. And we kind of kept trying to tell him to, quit it, but, get attacked for trying to do that. So now, towards, those who want to be, delegates on the committees, they're going to be, I guess, vetted more. Anybody can volunteer to be on these committees, and it's great because we're trying to get these state assemblies recognized and going, and you can enter into your state chapter's political party for the North National Political Party. Excuse me, can't say that right now, but
North American National Party.
Yeah, and then go into your state chapter, and then get into the union.
And it's a public union. It's not and we've said this a bunch of times before. It's a public union, so it's not like it's a private union where you have a president and basically he owns your life. All right, that's not what this is about. You can have many different unions within this union based on your industry. Now, we can't have, okay, how are you going to attract good business people. And I'm going to tell you what the all cap name thing is here in a minute and what happened back then, because a lot of people don't know what was going on back then. But you can attract good business people that are professional and work very hard to have their business that they work in to have a good reputation that always follows through and all these things. When you have a guy or two or three people on a call talking about the all cap name, what else do they talk about, guys? I can't even remember anymore. I've been out of those. I've gone through all those groups, and I didn't
Well,
agree with about 90% of the crap they were talking about in the first place. But go ahead.
Well,
uh,
this is Chris, if I may. They were constantly speaking about suing judges and lawyers, and that had nothing to do with promoting the ANU for business and a host of other, topics.
and so we adopted certain charters that, separated us from the British American Union, and we have pretty much no ties with them. We're a separate union. And this guy, David Johnson, was, bringing, discussions on the floor where he wanted to traffic us back into the UPU, and we caught on and just said, nope, that's not happening. And he was just every time getting on the calls and hijacking. I mean, when I
Well,
talk
wait a
on,
minute, Adam. On that
Mhm.
particular, let's go to that subject matter. What did that have to do with the clean water project that was going on to get clean water out there, to get clean food out there, to start trade and everything else with continental dollars, and the trade with and getting more manufacturers in, so we could free them up from a lot of regulations that are unnecessary regulations on them that were really causing our problems for their industries, and all these things to try to fix a lot of these problems, especially the truckers' problem, because there's a lot of problems in the trucking industry people do not know about. I'm actually surprised they even have food on the shelves for as much crap as those guys go through. That suing judges, um, giving the UPU your DNA and all this other crap, and all these other simple processes that they come up with that have been going on for 20 years in the middle of an ANU call, guys, folks. Just that's what was going on for months.
Yeah, the American National Union, interstate commerce jurisdiction, and like for the Committee on Clean Food and Water, we're moving over to the RO units for reverse osmosis to clean out the water, because if you're familiar with the water you're drinking from the tap, it's literally outright poison with the fluorine that they put in there and other stuff. I mean, it's just,
The
I'm
fluoride,
not going to
right?
go, yeah. Yeah, no, it's fluorine. It's a artificial type of fluoride.
Oh,
But besides that, instead of, concentrating on the RO units, he wants to go to prosecute the ones, that are doing all this. And it's just, okay, how's that business? We don't deal in judiciaries. Go through your political party and, and your state assembly, and then, do what you have to do to stop, these people from, poisoning your water. But, the Commerce Union has, nothing to do with that. So,
right. So what happens is that we get a lot of these what we call people that have started with this, and this happened a long time ago, folks. This was back in the late 90s, where it came with the all cap name. And there's a huge movement that believe that they don't believe in any fictions whatsoever. They don't want to. Well, they connect you as a surety. They connect you as this. Wonderful. All right, hold on a second. All right, before we get into all that, because we're not going to get into those arguments. What we're going to do is we're going to fix the problem. We're not going to get into the argument. You don't get anywhere by arguing, and you've been arguing for 20 years about the same thing over and over again. And at the same time, the men will do this, and then they have their wife open up a freaking electric account. at the electric company. They won't do it, but their wife will do it. So what? How is that fixing the problem?
There's no liability there, right? He's trying to stay away from any liability.
Well,
when
I'm
he
gonna get.
when he
Yeah, I'm
does
trying
that.
to steer this away from him, but I'm
Yeah.
talking about the majority of people like that. There's a lot of people like that. Okay, not just him. There's a lot of people like that have gone through these guru groups. They call it the straw man. They call it this. They call it that. All this crap that's going on. And all it is, and we've talked about this at the on T-ROH, is your person was trafficked offshore into a private trust. That's it. So all we got to do is put it back on land.
Right. The way in is the way out.
But they don't want to touch that. See that? Oh, that's an all cap name. They're afraid of it, literally afraid of it, and they'll fight tooth and nail. Now, folks, you're afraid of a fiction. You're calling it a fiction. A fiction is something that's not real, so you're afraid of something that's not real. They even brought it so far as to a religious point of view, where it's the dead man. That's the dead and we're the living. That's how far it's gone. But at the same time, they'll believe, well, do you believe you have constitutional rights in the Bill of Rights? Yeah. Well, you just screwed yourself. Go look at your Fifth Amendment. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Go look at it. Now you're just double-minded. You're not thinking right. You're not thinking it through. You're not going all the way through that. And folks, these people that live like this live in constant fear. It's constant fear. It's constant violence. It's constant argument. And what they do is they come into a group and they start baiting people to get into the conversation that they want to talk about. And what we tell them is, take your butts over to TalkShoe. That's where that crap goes. Okay? TalkShoe is well known for that. You can get over there and you can talk about it all day long if you want. Don't talk about it here. And if you're not willing to change the way you think, not willing to face the problem and fix the problem, don't come here. We don't have time for you. We've had people come on and sit and argue with us for how long, John? Hours.
We had one argument, went for five and a half hours the other night. And when we got through, when the call was over, he was still arguing the same thing.
Still saying the same thing.
Same thing over and over and over. You tell them how to fix a paper, take it down and say, sign your name. They take one look at it, refuse to sign it the way it should be signed, and come back and say, well, they wouldn't take my paperwork down there because they wouldn't sign it right.
Right. So we got to get, so the very first thing we have to go with, if we can't get past this one thing, you're not going to get anywhere in your lifetime. You're going to be arguing the rest of your life. If you can't get past UCC 1-308 on your signature and not putting it on there, we're not going to get anywhere with you. You're wasting your time. You're going to live in constant fear, violence, and confrontation for the rest of your life if you can't get past that. And everybody says, well, that's what protects your rights. No. You don't even know what the UCC is. You have no idea. It's nothing that everybody told you it was. You heard it from people that have no stake in the game. And they charge you $350 to sit there and talk about it. They have no stake in the game. They have no nationality. They have nothing. And they will sit there and talk about it and show you how it works and how this works and how that works. And then when it comes back and it doesn't work, guess what they do? You must have done something wrong. That'll be $50 more and we'll fix it for you.
Yeah, and take in mind, all that material is intellectual property, and And first in time, first in right, you have no rights to it. So when you use that stuff, you're pretty much or a member to a secret society operating and acting in private association. So that's not really smart to do. Like using their constitution of 1789, using their Bill of Rights, you have no social compact with them. So how is that going to work for you? And so over in the ANU, there's a charter, the Constitution. There's the bylaws and rules of order. Okay. There's the way that that structure works, the way it's organized to keep the members safe. And so, you know, we can't have members coming in there or people, you know, coming in there and causing disruptions and trying to filibuster, you know, what's, you know, trying to be, you know, motioned and passed to keep members safe and to keep the union, the American National Union, human rights compliant. And so that we can start recognizing the state assemblies and start recognizing the states. They've been already there. And so the meets and bounds have been claimed. It's ready for you to come in and just claim your status and your residency and then move on to claim your nationality. And, you know, everybody has a political status. You have one if you know it or not. So it's time that you start correcting it and going into the right path, because I guarantee you that, you know, if you did not know what you were doing throughout your whole life, and I could say I haven't, not until I came here and I took pretty much months of one participating, you know, getting involved and pretty much knowing the people who are in these government offices. I talk to them all the time, and you know, for one, I read what they put out. I study what they say. I research it, and you know, I don't you know follow blindly. I clearly see exactly what's happening before my eyes, and my creator has set the path for me. Never before in my life have I seen, you know, in clear eyes. I mean, just knowing that every time someone talks to you, that they know that you know exactly what you're talking about. Let's put it like this. The other day we called Home Depot. It's been 2 weeks since, you know, we bought a water heater, and you know, it ended up being a defective unit where the liquid was leaking into the electrical conduit. And so we paid over $1,000 to have that thing come out here and installed. And so we called them and they're like, yeah, well, bring that back in. And we're like, okay, well, you know, we can't install it. It costs to get installed, and it costs money to bring it over there. And then it costs money to get it installed again. They're trying to tell me it's not their problem. Well, I said, okay, you're the manager, right? Well, are you the spokesman for Home Depot? Do you speak for Home Depot? Because I could write a letter to you and I can ask them if you're a spokesman for Home Depot. He was like, hang on, sir, let's see what we can do, right? Next thing you know, I got the store manager from Home Depot on the phone, and they're saying, okay, this is what's going to happen. Get the installer in here, get him to install it, get it into a taxi, bring it over. What we're going to do is we're going to send, you can, you know, send the bill from the installer over to us. We'll pay for it. We'll pay for the taxi, and we'll pay for the installation, and we'll pay for the delivery. And sure enough, we're waiting for installation tomorrow. Everything is all clear and go to go. You know, so when you know international law and you tell them, hey, you got to fix a problem or it's human rights, okay? You are claiming a right to sell me a water heater, okay? Now, in order for you to claim a right, there is an obligation that needs to be fulfilled. Now, what you guys sold me was a scrap of metal. I still do not have, you know, hot water right now. So you did not fulfill that obligation. Therefore, you don't have to claim to give me a water heater unless that's fulfilled first, that obligation. So
Right.
they knew.
Hold on 1 second, Adam, because you keep cutting out a little bit every time you're talking, but you're not muting out. You're cutting out.
Okay.
So what he's saying is that Home Depot was claiming a right when they had not fulfilled their obligation. When you have that understanding, and you have the power of attorney understanding, things happen. Am I right?
Yes, that's exactly what I was saying.
During, I'm just saying this because you were kind of cutting out. It was a word that would be cut out, and then you move forward. I don't know
Okay.
why, but it's just happening. So I just wanted to make that clear to people that just by those simple understandings, you can turn a violent situation into a normal situation. That simple. Just with those three principles. And how many people, I'll call your boss, I'll get that, I'll get that, wang, 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 and start yelling and screaming. And that's what we call trash. And you're going to be treated like trash your whole life if you don't learn how to communicate. People have respect for you when you know and can properly diagnose the situation and address those issues. Did Chris have to get on the call to yell? Did anybody have to call to yell or scream?
Nope, not at all.
All you had to do was ask a couple of questions and it all turns around. It's not like you guys are trying to rip them off or take advantage of them. You just want a water heater that freaking works. You bought one, cost over $1,000 to put it in, and you want it to produce hot water. That's all. So you weren't taking advantage of Home Depot, but Home Depot was trying to take advantage of you until you asked one question and the whole thing straightens out. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's an accurate depiction. And furthermore, they couldn't have been more amendable when I returned the water heater. Just to add that in.
Very respectful. Now it's not about money. It's not about the water heater. It's not about anything other than the principles. Same with the cops. It's not about the all cap name. It's not about social security number. It's not about the address. It's about mutual respect. It goes beyond that simpleton thinking and simpleton arguments. That's not me. That's not me. You know how many people do that? They go through their whole life like that. That's not me. That's their answer. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? That person isn't me. That's their whole argument throughout their whole court case. They don't address the issues. They talk about that's not me. They're running from the issues. I'm going to tell you what it is. People that don't like fictions, folks, and the people that don't like them, or that I'm a living being and all that, believe it or not, you're not going to see this. I'm going to hear all kinds of freaking comments on the you suck and all this stuff. And I don't even care. I don't care anymore about that. Is you were trained a communist. They're going to say, that's crazy, that's nuts, you suck, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And the bottom line is this. If you can't have a fiction, you can't have a thought, because all thoughts are fictions. They're telling you not to think. You're running around afraid of thought. And that's exactly what a communist government wants. The communist organization doesn't want you to think. They want you to be afraid of those thoughts. You can't have your own business. That means the guy can't come up and say Bob's Auto Parts. He can't create Bob's Auto Parts and make a living for his to support his family or himself. That's a fiction. Can't have any fictions. We're real men. We're real men and women. They're afraid of thought. And believe it or not, it's a communist way of thinking that's mixed a little bit of religion in there to try to validate that thinking. All thoughts are fictions, no matter what it is. Well, every thought you have is a fiction. It's not based in reality until you make it a reality. Kmart was somebody's thought. That was a fiction at the time. Then it became Kmart and went on business for a long time. Made millions, started losing millions, but made millions, billions, and all that. That was a pretty good thought. That's someone that took that idea, turned it around to make money with it. That's called what they like to call capitalism. But if you take your thinking, that's not me, and you're afraid of that thought and that fiction, you don't take control of it, and you don't turn it into something that benefits you, you're going to be living in fear for the rest of your life, because that's the way it is in the Western world. And there's no reason to freaking try to stop it. And definitely going to a communist way is not going to stop it. So you have to deal with the issue. You call them victim all the time, victim, 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 but you're not doing anything about it. How many times do they go to groups, right? You guys were in other groups, weren't you? Before you came here?
I was, yeah. I was trying to, do the right thing. Law teams, try to assist, parents get their children back that, were abducted and man-stolen, kidnapped, abducted from DCFS and CPS that are running certain pedophile rings in certain areas, and it's really disgusting display, and it's scary, but it's going on. It's reality.
And Chris, did you get into any groups?
No, I hadn't. I didn't prior to straightening out my status.
If you listen to those groups, guys, they do absolutely nothing. They have a weekly bitch session, and they end up repeating themselves every week, because the next week they forget what they talked about last week, and they'll sit and say the same thing the next week. The exact same thing in the exact same words. It's like listening to the same tape over and over again and don't do a thing about it. They don't do any research on it. They're only parroting what they heard somewhere. And then they don't try to fix it, or let's see if we can resolve this problem. Let's go and solve this problem so we go on to the next problem and the next problem. Most people wouldn't believe what this government is actually doing in solving even more problems. You know, the all cap name thing and all that crap that these other groups are still talking about? We solved that problem years ago. Years ago. And then when people come on and they start talking to us about it, they literally think we don't know about that. And then they think that we're sitting here and we're just ignorant of it and we're stupid. And we solved that problem years ago. Which wasn't really even a problem at the time. So if you're going to think at that level, you're not going to get anywhere. If you go back to the 90s and you start thinking of all these processes, the UCC1s, and we had a guy come in that gave up a nationality because he might be a secured party creditor. He didn't want it to interfere with that status. Gave up a nationality, guys. Folks, a nationality. So he wouldn't, because it might interfere with his secured party creditor status. Everybody just shook their head and just went on. Just went on. We didn't even address it. Go ahead, John. What?
And he's knowing right off the bat that 90% of the people that try to use that system actually get put in jail for it. So he traded his nationality off for a jail sentence.
And the reason why they get put in jail is because they think they know how that works, and they don't know how that works.
I always say, right, it's a socialist system, so how can you be a secured party in a socialist system? It makes no sense.
Yeah, they don't even know what that is. Bet you they never even looked up the definition. Just like they never looked up the UCC and found out what that was. Just like they never looked up the all cat name and found out what that was. They were stuck on Sesticate for how many years? And came up with a whole process of how to deal with Sesticate. The Sesticate V.
Yeah, they got
1666. Huh?
they got that perfected too.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah.
They were wrong. They were wrong 100% of the time.
And people will come back and say, you guys are arrogant. You think you're all this and you're all that. And that is coming from somebody from an ignorant position. Because I'm going to tell you why that's ignorant. It's not because you're saying that. You guys are this, you guys are that, and da da da. It's not because of that. It's because you're unwilling to look into it further and find out what it really is. You have no curiosity. Find out what it is and understand it. And don't listen to what everybody else says it is, or what they think it is, or their point of view. It's the same thing that they do with the news. I remember being, this was back in the early 90s or late 80s, early 90s. I was sitting at I was at a store, and there was an event, there was something going on. I can't remember what it was going on. And I was sitting there, and there was a news camera sitting next, or standing, they were standing next to me, and they were doing a story, and they're trying to say what the story is. They're explaining the story. I'm looking at the event and looking at them and saying, that's not what's going on here. That was the first time it woke me up of what the news actually does. They use the background to actually promote a completely different story that they wanted to promote from the newsroom. So they used that background and event as their backdrop to that story. But nobody would be curious enough to find out or figure out, is that actually going on? Is that what was really happening before them? So they have a narrative that, in other words, the newsroom has a narrative that they have to try to push. So they go find a backdrop that makes it appear as if there's something, it goes along with their story, but it really doesn't. It's not even, it's a completely different event. That's what's going on within the patriot groups. They have a backdrop, and they get people to do these crazy processes and fill out IRS forms and all this other junk. When you know what? All of America, first day you're going to hear this. Only IRS agents are qualified and or authorized to fill out IRS forms. Nobody else is even qualified and or authorized to sign one. That's why it's under penalty of perjury. They're supposed to be doing it for you. How many people knew that? And how many people fill out their form and are bribed into filling out a form because they're going to get some money back? And they sign under penalty of perjury. You have no idea what that form has to do with. You're not an IRS agent. You're not qualified. You're not trained. Nothing. You just sign anything. Go ahead, John.
That system was set up for them to fill it out. All you're supposed to do is take your papers up there and hand them to them. That's it. And they fill it out from there.
And they're the ones that are supposed to sign under penalty of perjury.
That's right.
But how many people have ever looked into that any further than, hey, I'm going to get $700 back this year. Okay, great, wonderful. I'm going to get $1,200 back this year. Happens every time, but nobody looks into it. You got to look into it further. You got to be a little bit more curious. You have to investigate a little bit further to find out the truth. How many people think some bosses have a reputation of being the biggest asshole on the planet? And then they walk up to them and they start talking to them and figure out they're the nicest people in the world. And the ones that thought they were assholes were these inept freaking employees that don't know what the hell they're doing and screw everything up. Then the boss tries to correct them, and now the boss is an asshole. So their point of view was not an accurate point of view. Meaning the one that's calling the boss the asshole, and the boss is probably the nicest guy or nicest woman in the world. Hi, how you doing? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. What can I do for you? Here to help. You know, I'm getting paid. Might as well do something, right? There's a lot of that going on. Is there anything else you guys want to say on the ANU?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of new people coming in. There's a lot of people we expect that probably will have that classification of sovereign citizen. And I would say as people come in, we can work with them on having that classification removed and start working on correcting your political status. And that way you can now separate yourself from the British American Union and now know how to govern yourself and pretty much direct your own way and how you want to conduct your business. And the great thing is that we're all operating under first in time, first in right, and the British American Union has no jurisdiction on this side. So all their codes, ordinances, and statutes don't really apply, and there's no prohibition. Okay, and so we're getting all these unions up. We need people to come in and start putting the unions together, start putting the office together, get things going. I mean, we have business to take care of. Subject matters of hand, such as getting those trucker unions going. We have the DOT up and going. So you can come over and get a driver's license. You can get your registration and your plates, and now you're completely separate from the British American Union. It's great.
Yeah, and I'll just say for the new people coming in, get your entities published. All private organizations, once you've published in a publication of record, whether it be a private membership association, a corporate membership, associate membership, or even an organization associate membership, get those published, get your residency declared, and start your assemblies.
Okay. It's real simple, guys. It's just a process by which what we're doing is we're fixing your international status through publications and all these kinds of things. People are afraid of affirmations because they were told that Jesus said, "Don't swear to anything," and to go back and read it, that's not what it reads. It was a completely different subject matter that he was talking about. He wasn't talking about swearing an oath to an office. He was talking about something completely different. And so that came out, and all of a sudden, no more nationalities. Where in the first part of the book, when you're talking about the Yisrael nation, he formed that Yisrael nation. So I don't, It's a lot of weird stuff going on out there. And 99% of it is to keep you from claiming a nationality. 99% of it is to keep you from doing anything for yourself, looking into anything or investigating anything, and just believe what you're told, so that we can, they can get this. Meaning, if I was saying we, meaning speaking on, from their point of view, so they can get their new world order in place, get rid of all the boundaries and borders, and go to their world government. And that's what it's all about. So you're basic victims of a lot of disinformation, where in the past, people would say, there's no way that you could ever get along with a police officer. Well, you can. It happened twice, not just once. So it wasn't a setup, because that's what the paranoid guys are going to say. Well, it's a setup. They're just sitting there doing this. They're getting ready to get you, because they live in fear and paranoia constantly. And second time, no issues. No issues with Home Depot. And when you come on the ANU calls, it's about your business. Don't want to hear about your legal problems. That's not the ANU call. You can come on committee for that. We'll listen to your legal issues. But the other things are, there's separate calls. And that call, the ANU call, the ANU is not to be turned into a massive mob for your own personal war machine. That's not what it's there for. It's there to do positive things, go in a positive direction, where we make your lives, everybody helps each other make their lives better. Same with the Rain of the Heavens Healing Center, to make your health better without having to poke and prod you and open you up. And it causes issues from, way before you even get there. But what we're saying here is the sovereign citizen groups, or the groups that have been turned into sovereign citizen groups and all that, you kind of brought it on yourself on both sides. That whole conflict is brought on by ignorance on both sides. And we can solve those problems. It's a communication issue. The communication is horrible. You're not saying what you mean. And so we have to fix that communication. Once we fix the communication, you'll be getting along with people just fine. No problems. You'll may even get along with lawyers. Have no issues with them. Hi, how you doing? Hey, bud, what's up? And go on about your business. And it's not about, what we say. And when we try to fix it, we also get people to say, well, you're just kissing their butt. You're letting them get their way. And all. It's not about that. Not about that either. It's not about controlling you. It's about freeing you. That's what it's about. You have freedom now. You don't have to look over your shoulder every day. You don't have to be scared all the time. And you don't have to give up who you are. If you're a national or a red, you don't have to give that up. You have to give up anything about who you are and who you want to be. It's just simple communication, guys. Police officers deal with foreigners every day. Thanks for listening to the 72nd broadcast of the T-ROH Show. I hope you learned something tonight. And you can get on the committee call. That's usually on zoom.us. Anybody know the number of that? 857 something?
857-232-0155.
Right. That's usually open all the time. People can come on there. I want to learn more about this. If you want to learn more about this, just listen to the T-ROH shows before you come on. That way we can save a lot of time talking. If you listen to the T-ROHs, you can usually start, 14, 15. It's good to listen to them all, but 14, 15 is where we get into the meat of things and start explaining to people what's really going on in the country and what's happening. Now, we're going to have an issue coming up, and here's fair warning. We got a bunch of socialists that are trying to ban gun sales and these type of things. And we're not denying that happens, but there's a way to handle it. Okay, so get your assemblies together, then you can handle it. Handle the problems, but you're going to do it. If you want to succeed, you're going to do it the right way. If you're going to if you want to fail, you're going to do it the wrong way. But the people have the power and authority to turn this around in a matter of months. If they just listen to people that have already done it. And it works. Okay? So the only reason why this is all happening is because the people are failing to act. They're failing to do something. And then they don't know what to do. We'll show you step by step. This is how you do it and how you fix that problem. There's no denying that the communists and socialists are kicking your butts. There's no denying that. And they are kicking your butts. It's because they know what they're doing. And you can't say a thing about it. So we want to make sure that the other side, the silent majority, comes in and starts doing it correctly and reverses it. That way the people have spoken, and that's it. No problems. But you've got to get it to where the people have spoken. Alex Jones doesn't teach that. All he teaches is exposing, using the media to do it. He exposes it, but doesn't really get anything done about it. He doesn't teach you how to fix it. And neither do a lot of other people that are into this. They don't teach you how to fix it. They tell you what the problem is, and then they get you to try to fight. Got to get this done. And all they got to do is just something completely different, and it works. So we'll show you how that's done. I don't have time to explain it on this program. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.